Hello, I'm Jarrett Walls, and I chose the book Uprooted, The Japanese-American Experience During World War II by Albert Marrin. Albert Marrin is a writer of over 40 books and has won several awards for them, including the 2017 Robert F. Schulbert Informational Book Medal for his book Uprooted. Mr. Marrin is a former history teacher and took his love for writing into his retirement, where he began writing books for the youth. I chose Uprooted because I thought it was an interesting subject matter and was curious in how it would deliver the subject matter to students. Uprooted, the Japanese American experience during World War II. As its name implies, is about Japanese Americans during World War II, more specifically, the events surrounding the internment camps that were used to forcibly relocate over 120,000 Japanese living in America for over 4 years. The book was pretty interesting, as it only has a few chapters on the actual internment camps themselves, despite being about it. Instead, it mostly focuses on the events surrounding the internment camps and how they were deemed necessary by the Japanese government. It also talks about the Japanese and the racism they faced before, during, and after World War II, Japan's own history of xenophobia, and finally how the camps are remembered today. Overall, it's a very interesting read. First part of it deals with Japan's history. The second and third part deals with the racism that they faced moving to the Americas and Canada, and the laws and discrimination put forth against them. The fourth chapter deals with how the government came to the decision and finally enacted Executive Order 9066, which is the law that caused the Japanese internment camps and put Japanese Americans into the camps for over 4 years. The last few chapters deal with the Americans growing up in the camps and them constantly striving to prove that they were in fact loyal to America. And the last chapter deals with how the camps are remembered today, with memorials and sites of remembrances. I was surprised by how this book handled the subjects of racism in America. This book is pretty firmly directed towards upper middle school to high school students, as the subject matter is really complicated, and the word usage is more of a freshman high school level. I learned a lot, but I'll put it down to just 5 facts. I wasn't really aware of how terrible the internment camps were. I had no idea the Japanese were discriminated against prior to World War II, as I just never thought about it. I learned George Takei was actually grew up in Japanese internment camps. I also learned that FDR was initially against it and was pressured by outside forces to enact the law. And finally, I learned the fact that the entire thing was fully constitutional. Absolutely no one got in trouble for enacting it, despite it sticking an entire group of people based on their race into camps for 4 years. The book used a factual statement of the events with no interpretation by the author. It used an expository structure, as it has no story or main characters, just events. It has a cause and effect organizational pattern, as it leads events around the Japanese internment and shows how they lead to and were created into the Japanese internment. The book has a table of contents, a timeline of events, an index, source notes, and a note about the author. And the book used lots of pictures taken with some stills from the films about Japanese internment used as visual aids. Overall, the text was an insightful look into the events that led to this dark time in history and relate it to the modern day. It delivered facts in a creative telling of historical events. Overall, I learned lots about the subject matter. I even researched a bit more on my own. I will lead with the fact that this book does have serious subject matter, and as such, it's not a fun book to read. I would recommend the book, but with a warning that you won't be feeling good after reading it. It's an interesting event, though, so even if you don't want to read the book, I suggest you look it up, as it's not really a thing that's discussed in modern history classes.